Welcome to this explainer. We toss words like elite and nobility around all the time today, right? But the source material we're analyzing in this session fundamentally challenges our modern understanding of those concepts. It actually proposes a completely new framework for global leadership, one that is deeply rooted in absolute altruism and immense intellectual responsibility.
So what if everything we thought we knew about the elite and noblesse oblige was actually completely wrong? Because according to the text we're diving into today, humanity's historical definitions of nobility and justice have been heavily clouded by hidden motives. Think about it. Throughout history, we've seen so many people claim to act righteously only to harbor some pretty selfish ulterior motives behind closed doors. The author argues that up until now, society has essentially been functioning in this flawed state, where pure, genuine public service has been incredibly rare. But, as we're going to see, that era is coming to a close.
Okay, let's jump right into the first major concept from the text, which makes the bold claim that humanity has actually only completed about 70% of its foundational work. Think of all of human history like a giant construction site. All those technological advancements, the intense philosophical debates, the rise and fall of massive civilizations, it's all just been gathering the bricks and mortar. We've literally spent thousands of years stockpiling raw materials and laying down the groundwork required to finally build a truly peaceful, highly functional global society.
Now to get to that final 30%, the source outlines a really fascinating specific historical evolution. While the world at large was busy producing vast amounts of knowledge, the text asserts that a quiet, almost secret evolution was happening. According to this perspective, the Korean people were quietly refining their societal DNA behind the scenes, deliberately absorbing and integrating this massive influx of global knowledge, everything from deep philosophies to modern sciences. And the ultimate goal of all this? To synthesize all of that human progress into a completely new, incredibly robust intellectual foundation for everyone.
With this massive intellectual groundwork finally laid, the source argues that we are only just now, literally right now, entering an era where true noblesse is actually being created. Historically, the text states, we haven't actually had genuine nobility. Sure, we've had people with immense power, and we've had people with endless resources, but the real, true concept of the noblesse? The author argues that's a phenomenon that is just beginning to emerge in our present time. We're talking about a brand new class of highly evolved, intellectually enlightened leaders.
Which naturally leads us to a huge critical question. Who actually deserves this highly respected title today? If we completely strip away all that historical baggage and throw out the traditional definitions, what are the actual qualifications for someone to be considered a true higher-up in this new era?
Well, this concept perfectly illustrates the paradigm shift we're talking about. The old idea of nobility was strictly tied to wealth, aristocratic lineage, and sometimes just brute force. But the new idea completely flips the script on that. True nobility isn't about the money or the bloodline you happen to be born into. It's about possessing a truly open mind, high-quality thought, and immense intellectual depth. The source argues that simply having money just makes you, well, a person with a lot of money. It absolutely doesn't inherently make you a superior human being.
The text specifically hits the nail on the head here, emphasizing that being a true higher-up in society is defined by the weight of your thoughts, not the weight of your wallet. A genuine intellectual leader operates on a level of thinking that transcends the ordinary, everyday stuff. They possess a quality of thought that is fundamentally elevated, mostly because they are intensely focused on solving complex global problems rather than just figuring out how to upgrade the size of their superyacht.
Therefore, the famous concept of noblesse oblige, that inferred responsibility of privileged people to act with generosity, is only truly applied when these exceptional individuals actively figure out what they need to do for society. It's not just some passive VIP status you get to hold. It is an active daily execution of obligations to humanity. It requires executing your duties correctly and, honestly, actively worrying about and planning for the future of our species.
But how on earth does one reach that level of awareness? Well, to earn this new title of noblesse, the source introduces a strict, non-negotiable prerequisite. You must first become what is called a Hongik Ingan. This is the core condition. Without achieving the specific state of being, the text argues that absolutely no one can claim the title of true nobility, no matter what their societal standing might be.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the text takes a traditional Korean historical term, Hongik Ingan, and completely redefines it into a universal blueprint for modern altruism. Traditionally, Hongik Ingan roughly translates to devotion to the welfare of mankind. But the source takes that and expands it way beyond a simple national philosophy. It defines a modern Hongik Ingan as a global intellectual who dedicates their very existence to broadly benefiting all of humanity. To make this crystal clear,
The text explicitly states we have got to abandon the old idea that this is just about some inherited bloodline. Relying on a supposed Korean DNA is totally meaningless on its own. Instead, Hongik Ingan is an active, deeply altruistic lifestyle that is applicable to any global citizen. Without the right altruistic actions backing it up, the source argues that any inherited lineage means absolutely nothing. In fact, you'd be considered no better than a ruffian.
So the real crux of the matter is that these new public figures have to dedicate their lives entirely to altruism, completely walking away from selfish motives. The source really leaves no room for ambiguity here. It demands 0% selfish living and 100% living for others. We're talking about a total, radical, absolute commitment to the greater good.
In this wildly different new system, the text argues that social hierarchy and respect will soon be determined strictly by the scale of one's public service and how broadly they actually benefit others. It essentially becomes a true meritocracy of altruism. Your rank isn't dictated by your bank account anymore. It's dictated by how effectively you act as a genuine public servant and the measurable positive impact you have on society and the world at large.
Ultimately, it is your mindset, your intellectual growth, and your concrete contributions to society that are going to define your worth in this rapidly approaching new era. The source perfectly encapsulates this whole mindset with a pretty blunt statement. What matters is what you did, not being born of the Hongik Ingan seed. It's a really powerful reminder that pure potential means absolutely nothing without execution. You actually have to put in the work for humanity.
All right, let's move into our final theme here, the emergence of new global leaders. We've seen how this builds into a really powerful vision for the future. The groundwork has been laid out, the definitions of nobility have completely shifted, and the ultimate standard of total altruism has been set. So, what happens next? Well, this progression paints a very clear, very optimistic picture. We are actively transitioning out of a past era that was defined entirely by selfishness and hidden motives. We're currently sitting in the present era, navigating this massive awakening where true public servants are absorbing global knowledge and really stepping into their power. Looking ahead, as these enlightened individuals finally take charge, their combined wisdom is predicted to literally clear away the shadows of society and systematically remove human hardship in the future era. The source strongly stresses that this movement is absolutely not confined to one nation. True leaders are emerging right now from the groundwork we've spent centuries building. Hongik Ingan is becoming a truly universal global phenomenon. Moving forward, the text boldly claims that altruistic actions and altruistic actions alone will exclusively lead the world forward. Anyone, anywhere, listening to this right now who adopts this selfless ideology has the real potential to rise up as a global leader.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought straight from the source. We are entering an era where those who only know themselves, those who are purely selfish, will simply be rejected by society. They will never be able to sit in high positions of power again. The rules of the game are fundamentally changing. So, the question you really have to ask yourself today is this. In a world that will soon entirely demand selfless leadership, how are you preparing your mind for this new era?